Let's be innovative. Let's challenge the norm. Let's raise the bar. Let's be the elite.
To be the best, one must beat the best. Ovals, road courses, the streets of iconic cities, race after race, the top sim racing IndyCar stars will battle it out. In sim racing, it doesn't get any better than this. This is their battleground, for the checkered flag, for the glory, for the right to say they are the best. The cars and stars of the Lionheart IndyCar Series, presented by Butt Kicker, are ready to race.
It's been 2 weeks since the caution-free game of strategy that saw Robert Motegi return to the top step of the podium. But the Lionheart IndyCar Series heads back to the home of IndyCar in Japan. Today, the series returns for its second part of a doubleheader with a return to a high-speed, flowing road course for just the second time in its 10 seasons. Hello and welcome to the land of the rising sun. This is the Next Level Racing Motegi Grand Prix presented by SimRace247.com. Welcome back to RaceSpot TV for coverage of the 2022 Lionheart IndyCar Series. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, delighted as always to be joined by the one and only Justin Prince, and let's dive straight into our butt kicker pre-race show. And Justin, maybe the most telling thing about the race that unfortunately I had to miss was that you did not have much to really remember about the race. It's a good thing, because Motegi is known for being tough and for being physical, but we now head to the Grand Prix layout, a venue that only hosted IndyCar once, but it's a venue that many of these drivers have been waiting for.
Yeah, the oval side of this doubleheader had a lot of calm moments. It came down mostly to strategy in terms of how hard you pushed as a driver around the oval. Motegi GP for the road course portion of the doubleheader could come into the same way because the fuel windows are expected to be fairly tight for this race tonight. It could be very critical to make sure you're on the right compound to be able to push forward around this racetrack. And in turn, keep in mind, this push to the championship sees 3 more road courses, one of which is tonight. Meaning, if you're good at turning left and right, you better score some valuable points.
6 races left to go, and yes, 3 of them are road courses. There's the look at the next level racing schedule. We'll take a look, though, at the butt kicker driver standings because, well, it's been a rampantly dominant year for Philip Kraus, who continues to be blessed by podiums no matter where he goes. He'll look to build a house here at the Motegi Grand Prix track after finishing second a couple of weeks ago. Alexander Van der Sat had built a 10-point advantage over his teammate Robert Malechka. Connor Harrington has closed on them, though, and has jumped his way up into the top 4. Plenty of strong names, but of course 3, 4 rookies, 5 rookies that we can really talk about. But Bensi and Marquez have been unsung heroes over the course of 2022.
Yeah, Marquez in particular has been improving as the season's gone on, gaining more and more confidence with each racetrack, and in turn is now in that tight fight, as talked about, for the top 7. Bensi has slipped back a little bit in some of the races as of late, where it's been up and down. But those top 3 rookies in particular, yes, Kraus, Van der Sat, and Malechka, they have been lights out dominant, especially when it comes to Kraus. They have been difficult to stop and difficult to hold back in races this season.
2021 was the year of Phil Kraus, of Adam Blocker. 2022 has been the year of Phil Kraus, and domination in the driver standings has also allowed Phil Kraus to lead private label Team Hype to a continued dominant run in the HyperX team standings, where they now lead by over 400 points compared to Powerslide Adrenaline, but the 2 of them well and truly clear of the field. They are fighting third on back. Has been a shake-up as well, 6th on back, so plenty to watch for in this HyperX Teams Championship. We look then at the butt kicker rookie standings, and with 4 or 5 drivers inside of the top 10, those are the 5 that we focused on before, but Matthias Kraus has been one, especially over the course of the summer, JP, that has really come into his own and found some momentum. Adriano Pinheiro as well, after starting with 2 pole positions, struggling in the first third of the season after that, has started to find some footing as well.
In the case of Kraus in particular, 4 top 10s in the past 5 races. After starting off very slow in the series, he's become a fixture towards the front part of the field, especially when it comes to his road course skills, starting to gain a little more confidence at Road America in particular for the top 5. So keep an eye on Kraus, I think, when it comes to pace, absolutely. Give credit as well to drivers like Musselman. They have also showed a little bit of improvement, up to the top 20 in the points after last time out. Back-to-back top 10s for the Musselman.
Talk to you then about your Gomez Sim Industry Season Series details in Season 10 of the Lionheart Racing Series. It's been 9 years, though, of competition for the racing series, but what a run this IndyCar series has had. Now, of course, on the latest American open wheel machine, the Dallara IR18, a custom-fit setup built by RaceSpot's own Andrew Kinsella, with in-car tools available for the drivers. Front and rear anti-roll bars, the main talking point. Cash and prizes have gone from just over $7,000 in 2021 to $10,600 in 2022. Our champion walks away with the Gomez Sim Industries Formula Pro Elite Rim, as well as the Next Level Racing GT Track cockpit. 1 more Triple Crown still left to go, the double point season finale at Auto Club. We'll get ready to crown a new champion, with Phil Kraus well and truly on his way to securing that throne after dethroning Adam Blocker. Private Label Team Hype on course to continue their run in the team championships. Not much to talk about in terms of Moza racing event details, because it is only the 2nd trip to the Motegi Grand Prix course in what has been 9 previous seasons. But JP, you can see from up above, the oval wrapping itself around the road course. It's a technical road course, but because of the way that it's got to nestle itself around the super speedway egg-shaped oval that we saw racing a couple of weeks ago, it is fair to say it's not necessarily the most beautiful track to look at.
Yeah, this racetrack can bring some challenges, especially when it comes to its fairly tight parts of the circuit inside the oval part of the facility. Could bring a little bit of tightness. And some of the drivers in turn had some struggles working their way through turns 3 and 4 in particular, as well as out through 130R in turn 6, be able to sort themselves out in practice. The best opportunities for today, that front straightaway for some of the passes as well. There's the downhill straight that works your way to the 90 corner. The 90-degree corner in turn 11, should say. So there is a lot of opportunity to try and move around, but it's not a lot of space to work around when it comes to this 4.801 kilometer, 2.983 mile facility.
We'll try and grab an onboard lap with a driver at some point, with qualifying underway. 10 minutes thrown on the clock, and drivers get 4 attempts at qualifying. Some chatter that potentially lap 2 would be the fastest of the laps. Would mean if you do that, you get one final attempt of just one flying lap at the very end of the session. We will see how drivers elect to play that one. Blocker builds, of course. Much attention goes to John Bodefor, who is delighted on Monday night IndyCars on RaceSpot TV. In an open setup competition, it will be interesting to see how he takes to the track in this fixed setup competition. Here's Phil Krause as he comes down that long back straightaway that plunges down the hill. We'll grab the look on board with an onboard lap in a sec, JP, but qualifying will be important, with passing going to be difficult.
Track position is huge around a track such as this racetrack. You see how tight this facility is. Not as long of a road course to be able to snake your way around in turn. We'll have to see how some of these drivers really perform under the pressure to be able to get the track position here as Phil Krause starts a lap.
Let's ride on board with the champion-elect into turn 1, down into second gear. A double apex kind of a corner sweeps back, and you can use the curbs because they're relatively flat around the facility. And you'll see here as we sweep down in towards turn 3, drivers maximizing track and murdering some cones on their way through the second gear long corner. Important to be patient on the throttle because it arches back, and Phil Krause makes a mess of lap number 1 and says, not this time around, I will grid up and go again. It is Adam Blocker that maybe, with no surprise, currently has the benchmark, a 1:34.423.
He's been one of the quickest drivers throughout the session so far in preparation for tonight. Looking solidly dialed in for this racetrack as you follow on board here. And this is the part of the racetrack that brings that infield portion towards turn 5 that I mentioned, where some of the drivers have had some struggles coming out of this section, all the way for the late braking marks before you work your way underneath the racetrack for the first time, Arjuna. 130R, bit of a smooth corner off towards the S curve, and in turn, that run up to the hairpin curb makes its way forward around at about mid-speed at around 90, 100 miles an hour in some parts, around 80 towards the heart of the S's.
So we have a slightly smaller field than normal today, just 16 laps on the board. Krause and Callisto, Matthias Krause that is, up in third spot. John Bodefor 5th with 1 lap under his belt. A couple of cars have already elected to return to pit lane and try and go again. It will be interesting to see exactly how different drivers choose to challenge it. Blocker has slowed the momentum on this lap, it's fair to say. I think it's all about building up for the next opportunity as he'll roll on to lap 3 of 4. Potentially his final opportunity to go fast. We'll jump on board with Blocker and trust that he'll be a better taxi man for us here today. He'll come across the line as Guyon and Kinsella miss out on the top 10, but Blocker the fastest into turn 1, braking just at the 75-meter board. And again, you'll see just hugging it tight. Slightly different line taken to what Phil Krause did. More liberties with the curb on his left-hand side. Down this short run into turn 3 again on the anchors at 50 meters. Again, second gear, not electing to get into first for less rotation. A little earlier on the throttle, but more tentative on the throttle from Blocker as he works his way in towards now the downhill section that will cut underneath the oval. Track is a little bit off camber at the outside, but on camber at the apex, so it's important to hit the corner, unlike what Blocker did there, sweeping your way in towards turn 6 and up into turn 7. This is where precision becomes important. patience as well as Blocker works through the S's down all the way into second gear, has seen that the lap is not good, and just like Kraus will bail and try again.
Already fairly easy. We've seen some of the off tracks. The track temperature is very toasty, keep in mind. Around 131 degrees Fahrenheit, 131 precisely currently. So it makes it a much greasy racetrack to be able to deal with, and some of these drivers struggling a little bit with that, it seems. See where Kraus pops up, though. This is his second total lap around the racetrack.
Margin between Blocker and Van der Sande just under 0.2 of a second. Expected a little bit more. Remember, Connor Harrington has an end-of-line penalty. We do not expect, therefore, to see him charge through the field. It would take a lot. Here comes Kraus then. In the private label Team Hype number 19, tidy through the final corner. All drivers qualifying on the red compound, expected to be the preferred race compound as well. It's a 1:34.277. It's good enough for pole position, just over 1/10 of a second. The pressure was on, and Kraus, as always, delivers.
He makes it look simple, right? That was quicker than anything Blocker even put up in final practice in turn as well. So this is going to be a difficult task for the rest of the pack tonight. Kraus looks very confident, to say the very least, after what was not the easiest of times on the oval portion last time out.
Works his way through the middle portion on lap 3 of 4 in qualifying. More and more drivers working their way through qualifying without laps on the board. Graf, Taylor, and Fraser all getting towards their final attempts without a lap time. Taylor, as I said, that jumps up into 4th. Joshua Chin as well waiting. Graf up into 9th. All crucial to get something on the board. We wait now for Adam Blocker to also start what will be his final qualifying attempt as he works into turn 1 and 2.
Tough thing's going to be, can Blocker respond at all? Last time by a scene, invalidated lap time. The tough thing is, where is he going to find the 0.2 of a second? He's trying a little bit of a tighter line of notice. There's some of the others as we take a look at the newcomer in the 67, looking to also pick up after an invalidated last time by.
9th provisionally for the Alpine Stars geodesic racing machine, and Phil Kraus has bailed from his attempt, I think, so he is done in qualifying, practicing what is a tricky pit entry. We'll talk more about that when we get into the race itself. 90 seconds left on the board now as we work through the final sectors of go fast time for Adam Blocker. Looks nice and tidy as he works into those final complexes. We jump on board with the Powerslide Motorsports driver out of the V corner up to the hairpin, one of the slowest points on the track as you look to get the best exit possible down the run into the downhill straight. Again, Blocker using those flat curves as Jacob Oster up into 11th in the factory-backed motorsports machine. That's a good lap time from the 82. Malechka into 3rd in front of Van der Sande. It's Powerslide 2, 3, and 4 looking to bully Kraus at the front of the field. But JP, we wait for Blocker to run to the line.
Track temperature is starting to dip. That might work a bit in Blocker's favor, but that drift isn't going to work. That might cost him just about all the time he needed.
And did he get an off track as well? It will be close. He'll run to the line, a 34.6. It will be no improvement. Phil Kraus gets yet another pole in what has been a story 2022.
At this point, Kraus just continuing to make a mainstay at the front slots on the starting grids throughout the campaign. That dominating performance again in qualifying backs up what we've seen all season. Look at the change of the board, though. The newcomer up to 2nd to end out qualifying. Wow.
He does it at the death and pips Joshua Chin, who thought for a moment he had locked his way to the front row of the grid. Oh, we're in for the treat of the race that we expected, with the top 5 splits by just over 1/4 of a second. But we are ready to go racing for the next level racing Motegi Grand Prix presented by SimRace247. Let's dial you down through the starting grid in the land of the rising sun. It is pole position number 10 for Philip Kraus and the private label Team Hype number 19. As we take a look at your butt kicker starting grid, it's a 134.277, then it's Kraus. The pole position, the Alpine Stars geodesic racing machine, though, will be one to watch. 600th off the pace. Joshua Chin works his way forward, looking to work with Kraus to stop Powerslide from playing games at the front, with Blocker, Malechka, and Van der Sant bookending the top 6 cars. Down in 7th is Matt Taylor in the Madworks Motorsports number 8, with Lionel Kalisto off to his right-hand side. Both drivers running well in qualifying. Brian Carey up there as well, with Matthias Kraus looking for yet another top 10. Tyler Graf in the 98 Graphics LPM machines lines up inside of Jacob Oster in that green and yellow car that you will be unable to miss. Bombers back in Bensi, 13th and 14th. Brian Beard lines up inside of Andrew Marquez, with Mitchell Riggs and Alex Guyon 17th and 18th spots. Lawcamp and Fraser complete the top 20, while Sexton and Kinsella share row 11. Jason Brophy sees Matt Houston alongside, while the final cars that will roll from the back, Connor Harrington with an end-of-line penalty, and James Brandt in the Synergy Motorsports number 15. A slightly smaller field than normal, but maybe, oh maybe, it will just be what we need to get through these opening laps without the drama of a safety car. We saw it already once this season at Watkins Glen. As always, featured onboard cameras to walk you down. Let's quickly run you down through them. On board with Brian Beard, who has the Gomez Sim Industries on board. Look, makers of high-end esports equipment and controls. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com.
Meanwhile, in the 62 car, it's your HyperX onboard camera. Devin Larkamp, whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows. All gamers at HyperX, as always, ready to game.
It's going to be a fun one, JP. Predictions as we get ready to rumble.
A difficult race to be able to beat Philip Kraus, but I think the newcomer, John Baderford, putting in some high expectations with that backing from his group. Can he keep up with the driver who's dominated all season?
Phil Kraus will look for win 12 in 27 attempts. He'll get us going for the next level racing Motegi Grand Prix, presented by SimRace247. It's a good start from Joshua Chin. Immediately to the inside, he'll go to the Alpine Stars geodesic racing car. Interesting tire choices to talk about as well. The Powerslide Motorsports trio all starting on the primary non-preferred choice of tire in this race. They'll have to hold stations as we work through these opening sectors of the lap. Baderford holds off the charge from Chin, though, as they work to the middle sector.
Oh, and one spin in the heart of the pack. Brian Carey's nightmare season continues. Another off track. Alex Guyon getting collected the rest of the field, keeping nice and clean up from the get-go.
We'll grab a look at the RaceBot TV replay in a moment, but what a moment it was for Brian Carey, and what a tough season it has been, as JP alluded to. Into the S's, the front of the field goes. Separation is starting to build. Kraus and Graf, 9th and 10th, split by 1.3. Almost the range of the draft. In-car tools might be a factor as we work through the race. Front and rear anti-roll bar stiffen and loosen up the car. Get a little bit more understeer, a little bit more oversteer, all up to driver preference and dialing in what the tire requires at every point in time. Bradley Sexton runs off the road now as well. 3 drivers running down at the tail of the field. It will be Phil Kraus from John Baderford, Joshua Chin, Blocker, and Van der Sant, the top 5 at the end of lap number 1.
And that pack that is built up in the second group could lose some more cars as well. Caleb Bensi is having to come in right now for mandatory damage repairs. He picked up some contact, it looks like, in the 29. So several drivers who we talked about having solid campaigns in some cases having a nightmarish start here tonight.
And give full credit to Baderford, the only driver able to hold stations for the time being with the race leader. As you take a look now at the positions gained so far in this race, what we really wanted to show you was this, the tire compound choices, because with the primary harder compound of tire that gives you less grip but wears a lot slightly slower, it's about 4 seconds slower per stint. It's genius what Powerslide are trying to do if they can make it work. Malechka will lose out to Kalisto. He's got to stop sliding further backwards, because if they can hold up with those at the front of the field, it will flip around at one point in this race when Powerslide will go on the charge.
Yeah, that has to be the main thought. If this track cools down in the direction they want it to go, then they will have much faster race cars. The difference we talked about between the reds and the blacks, expected about 4 seconds here today. You see how hot it is right now. This is midday in Sim, just around 1 p.m. at 54 degrees Celsius. That track temperature we'll have to keep an eye on throughout much of the rest of this race to see if it goes down, if it picks up. I don't know if it's going to work out as well as expected for those drivers, but you have to keep in mind, minimize the time of the blacks because that time difference already a second a lap.
We'll see exactly how things will play out. We'll grab a look at a replay of what happened at the start of this race, and on lap number 1 as they filtered through 4, Brian Carey just on power looped it around, and then I think Guyon maybe in a bit of sympathy looped it around with him as well. We'll take one more look and then we'll jump on board with the Guyon's machine as you see on board with him. Just gets a little bit more on the curb than he wanted to, and it's a good job from the field to avoid running into him.
I think that's where Sexton's damage came in. We've seen a little clip from the left side of that machine. But in turn, that is how things have broken up in turn for some of these drivers in the packs, as well as the tire compounds, of course. Already nearly 4 seconds back the drivers of the primary wall tires here. Lionel Callisto is trying to find a way to keep up with the main drivers and cut his way around them.
We have seen through the course of the season Callisto really aggressive at the start of the race and then tends, unfortunately, to falter slightly. Already has burned through 2 of the 10 push-to-passes that he has. Will give you 60 to 70 horsepower extra down some of these rather sizable straights. You, of course, have to ration it out, of course, through the course of the night. Harrington gets in front of Mitchell Riggs as Oster and Graf duel in towards one of the slowest points on the track. It will be Oster that sweeps to the outside, trying to roll onto the power a little bit earlier. Able to build the power, should be enough for him to get on through. Uses that push to pass as well.
Tower Graf, keep in mind, has built up lots of confidence from the speedway side of things. Huge contact to the right side of the car for a moment. Kite Bombersback nearly took a hard send towards the side pod.
And Graf then through the final corner compromise. Bombersback with the up and under, able to get on through. Race control, as always, will be reviewing stuff as we work through the course of the race. So I'm being tagged in Discord about ripping into one of our fellow RaceBot TV commentators on an earlier broadcast today. I knew I would have to pay the piper. I'll be very careful what I say about the likes of Andrew Kinsella today, who is 4 positions up already into 18th spot. He will be glad to hear that. Malechka now defends as Taylor on the primary behind tries to fend off the charge from Matthias Kraus as Oster closes as well.
Yeah, several of these drivers trying to look forward. Taylor on the black wall tires as well. Matthias Kraus just not able to find a place around. We talked about this off the top of the broadcast, the importance of qualifying position. This is not an easy circuit to be able to get yourself around with the shorter distance of sorts here with this road course. And Kraus is a good example of it. Lots of arrow wash in the midst of the corners. Not able to build up quite enough speed to be able to get a pull around yet, even with the quicker rotational speed, just in the midst of being boxed in right here behind these drivers, getting tagged and dragged on back.
Look at the front of the field and right on board with the man who comes in with no pressure on a run to the end of the season where he'll be building for 2023 and our challenge at the Rookie of the Year Championship as well. Reminds me of the charge that we saw from Alexander Van der Sant at Watkins Glen earlier this year. It was pit road execution that helped Van der Sant gain track position. However, it was on track where Van der Sant executed perfectly in the tango they did at the end of the race. I wonder if Bodefer is minding the tires as they murder some cones on the run in towards turn number 3 and is looking to try and charge with the slight overcut at the end of this opening stint.
I didn't mind the cones right there, but I was going to say, when you're with a group like Alpine Star Geodesic Racing, like Bodefer, you have high expectations, and John has those extremely high expectations because that team is strong when it comes to their core.
Callisto has run off the track to the point where our cameras can't even catch him. We see the rejoin. We'll have to pick up exactly what it is as he still tries to find footing on the tarmac. Will slide in front of Kinsella, who has to check up. That's a little bit naughty if we're being completely honest. The Canadian will filter on through. A big moment though for Callisto.
I think the reason Kalisto went so far off just simply missed his braking zone, trying to keep up and find a way around some of those error drivers in front. He had locked it up a couple times before that incident, but you see things are starting to get a little bit hairy. Everyone is trying to find a way around Tyler Graf. That's put Marquez up for grabs.
Connor Harrington has managed to gain 13 spots in just under 5 laps into 12th. Don't count out the top 10. He has started on the alternates and is looking to charge. Riggs and Marquez will duel down the hill. Advantage to the Ascari Autosport machine, who has the preferred line into the final sequence of corners. And pit exited off to the right-hand side. We will talk about that more later on today. Trust us on that. It will prove to be dramatic. Here's a look at the replay then. Kalisto just locking up under the brakes as he tries to work on the back of Van der Sande, and you can tell just how hard Kalisto was pushing.
Yeah, misses the mark, just about rams in the back into Van der Sande. Has to cut to the left to avoid significant damage and taking out one of the top drivers in the standings. In turn, Kalisto paying the price back to 18th position. He had been slicing his way through the pack. By the way, speaking of slicing, 13 spots up for Harrington.
Incredible. He's taken advantage of plenty of the chaos so far this race, and there has been plenty of it. It started, of course, with Brian Carey on the opening lap, but most recently, it's been displayed by Lionel Kalisto. So we talked a little bit about fuel. 42 laps, about 125 miles. Fuel window anywhere from 13 to 16 laps. Now, if you did 13 lap stints, you are looking at a slight disadvantage of the splash and dash, and it is a long pit lane here, so it is a slight disadvantage very much to have to make the splash and dash, and for that reason, JP, we do expect plenty of fuel saving.
If you haven't been fuel saving already, then you're in big trouble. Let's put it that way right now. You have to be able to make it at least about 15 laps a stint to make it to the checker flag, and that puts drivers like Betafort in a good spot here. If they're able to just ride back and wait a little bit, if they're even on that pace, they're able to save a little bit of fuel. Yes, the cones don't add to the fuel mileage. They just are, that's happenstance of that. But in all seriousness, that allows the opportunity for drivers to be able to ride forward and save the gas in the midst of the pack, and that's where some of the techniques really come in. Let it roll through the corners. That's some of the major things you'll have to do, and are some of the things these drivers have to do if they want to make it to those fuel marks already halfway through the stint.
Matthias Kraus has gone and passed Matt Taylor. Next target for him in the primary queue of cars will be Robert Malechka, coming off the victory, of course, at Twin Ring Motegi. We are starting to see the field splinter up very slightly as we see the track map already Kraus in towards the hairpin, as the likes of Guyon and Carey still into turn 5 or so. Of course, 2 cars already having the issues today. Plenty of cars and tires being worked hard so far. It's a good thing, of course, that our tire bills are virtual, because I was talking with a Porsche Carrera Cup driver, JP, and they were saying that on a good weekend they are spending $12,000 on tires just to go racing in the dry.
Yeah, it can be pricey in real world, let's put it that way, in terms of the tires. Remember one of the NASCAR races where you've seen plenty of tire sets coming to play costing about $30,000 per team. Remember, that was during, keep in mind, in 2008. We're talking about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway race where that figure came up. Imagine that on a week-to-week basis today with how things are. It can be pricey for tires. Imagine if there was a sim racing equivalent where every time you hit a cone, you had to pay for the fee of a worker to get the cone.
At RaceSpot, we are staunch supporters of cone rights, so whatever it takes, we will protect those cones. And I've always wondered what it would be like in sim racing if you had a damage budget to work with, if you know what I mean. Like, for the course of the Lionheart season, you could accrue, throw a random number out there, $1 million worth of damage, and if you lost the front wing, it's I don't know, 100,000. I always wonder what that would do to the racing. Yeah, maybe it would make it less exciting.
Do you want everyone to run out of that budget on the service within their first week on it?
Hey, we've had 2 races this season, caution-free, Homestead and Motegi. If you had told these drivers those 2 races would be caution-free, I think they would question your sanity.
You're right on that part, and keep in mind, though, and even in those clean races, Matt Taylor, remember, did pick up significant damage. So it's not easy to even drive in a clean-to-green race with everybody being clean and keeping it.
There are exceptions to every rule. Tyler Graf passed by Fraser, battle of the compounds. Graf on the harder compound that will grip up a little bit less and getting through that stint as early as possible. Kinsella, you can see at the back, squiggling away as he squirms onto the power. Plenty of drivers fighting here for spots in the championship and spots for their teams as well as we come towards the end of the season. Now here comes the Ascari Autosport 09 as Mitchell Riggs sails on through. That's not even a defense put forward because he overcommitted, and Graf gets back to position. Marquez forward as well.
Riggs really wanted that spot after the defensive move from Graf, and Graf just played him. Just forced him to send it up the inside, and he sent it so hard, it's ended up losing spots, and now Graf gets a chance to breathe a little bit. So that's something you, as a driver, you essentially laugh at because you know it opens up that chance to just say, thank you for your opportunity for the pass. I'll take it right back.
You can see the gap growing between Betafer, and Joshua Chin. Still able to hold on to the back of your race leader is that Alpine Stars geodesic racing car. You cannot ever miss the back in gold. I do enjoy the Vector by RSR Lionheart Retro Series machines that we see, but geodesic did it first. We'll jump around the pack for a couple of moments and just track some of the battles here, JP. Malechka and Kraus, of course, on 2 different compounds, fighting now at the point where maybe this crossover has happened, and Malechka will have a little bit more of an advantage than he had before. Oster and Bommersbach fighting for 9th and 10th as well. 2 drivers that have clawed their way into the top 10.
Bommersbach's been doing a solid job. Oster's improving as this run goes on. He was really struggling. I've noticed a little bit at the start of this one, but has calmed on down. Just to say that, he nearly goes off the racetrack. Christian Steele is on his box, so Christian's probably making sure he remembers that moment several times today. In turn, some of these drivers are really getting a good rhythm of this racetrack, I've noticed, since the track temperature is stabilized for the most part. That will be the major thing for how the rest of this race plays out we talked about off the top.
So, if I was to ask you the question, JP, who are the 2 fiercest rivals in terms of teams in this championship, which 2 are you going to answer?
That's a good question because there are a lot of strong competitors when it comes to the team side of things, but private label team hype and the rivalry that's built up with Adrenaline in their respective teams, I think has been something to really come up to mind. Because they've had a lot of fierce battling, in particular with a lot of the races, a lot of fierce contact in some of their cases. That comes up to mind.
So if I was then to tell you that Phil Kraus and Adam Blocker, oh, there's a bit of a moment there. Bommersbach almost runs into the back of Oster down the hill into the braking zone, but they get away with that one by the narrowest of margins. If I was to tell you Adam Blocker and Phil Kraus were going to team up to run V8 Supercars online races this year, would that be a total shock to you?
That would be an interesting play, absolutely, because it shows the respect, I think, built up amongst each other to have that opportunity, but in turn, I'm curious how that teamwork would play out.
Yes, no, so they've done one race already. It was the Phillip Island endurance race with the V8 Scop series. They will be doing the Bathurst 1000 hopefully this coming weekend as we watch Riggs, Callisto, Marquez all fighting. Rather interesting thing, though, that I found quite curious, and I'll be curious to track how they run in the land down under. It'll be an interesting proposition. A very different sort of car as Oster drops a couple of positions there, loses out to Bommersbach and Harrington, as Harrington now squirms his way and forces his way and bullies his way past Bommersbach.
Just able to fake him out once more, and Bommersbach taking advantage of them, fighting and squabbling a little bit. Bommersbach Not as quick pace-wise last time by 8/10 compared to Harrington, though. But the main thing you have to keep in mind is when you're in a different car, such as that arrangement you just described, it opens up the opportunity for drivers to see how they've raced in their preferred car and team together when it's not their primary car for a series such as this one, as you see how quick Harrington makes it look.
Yeah, it was the mistake from Oster into this very not this very section. There's two sections that look rather similar as they cut underneath the track here at Twin Ring Motegi, of course, built as and intended to be the home for American open wheel racing in Japan. Unfortunately, after the earthquake in 2011 meant that the oval took damage, which meant that for the final time that IndyCar came here, they did run the Grand Prix layout. Since then, the oval has sat relatively unused. The Grand Prix layout still gets use from the likes of Super Formula as well as Super GT, but it's a track that takes special place in the heart of Lionheart because, of course, it took 6 years before Honda finally took their first victory on the oval here, when in 2004, the Lionheart himself, Dan Weldon, took the first win for Honda.
Yeah, this facility, you have to keep in mind, does have that fair bit of history since its opening you talked about in 1997. Recently, earlier this year, became Mobility Resort Motegi, actually, because it also, in its 25th anniversary, hosts currently the motorcycle events. That oval, keep in mind, hosted stock car action at one point in 1998. The interesting thing, Mike Skinner had won that race, and it was the first time both Dale Sr. and Jr. competed against one another in that event.
Yeah, NASCAR's got an interesting history in Japan, has gone over to Suzuka as well on occasion. It's been a long time, maybe we'll see a return with the next-gen Cup cars, of course available on iRacing, as NASCAR and iRacing continue to develop their partnership further and further. We have a first taker down to this very tricky pit lane entry. There's a chicane basically in between you and the pit entry line. Oster able to navigate it safely as he'll get off the red compound of tires and potentially, I would think, throw the sticker blacks, the fresh set of the harder compound, onto his car.
Trying to see if he's swapping that in. Currently on the tire indicator, he has made the swap, not on the car graphically, we'll say, so he is on the primary tires for the Sims data. The interesting thing is, lap 12 to do it. That's the tough thing for the fuel window. You've just seen how aggressive, though, that pit exit is, right? You're in the middle of the racetrack, peeling it back out onto the circuit in some cases.
I think it's a good point you bring up when it comes to the fuel windows for Oster. Maybe conceding that already he is looking at taking the extra stop relative to those around him as he joins the series after competing first in the Lionheart Speedway Series for 2022. So, lap 13 around the opening of the pit stop window. Will we see any takers as Phil Krause rounds his way towards that final complex? Not this time for the opening duo. At the front of the field, Josh Chin will stay out there as well, who is losing ground, it should be noted, to Adam Blocker. Half a second quicker than the entirety of the top three last time by.
Yeah, Blocker is starting to really take advantage of the fall-off from the Reds, and that's where that interval we talked about of 4-lap quick before a second quick for the Red comes in. Yes, it can be as much as 6 seconds during a stint, but this is where it's starting to really propel itself. The temperatures, it's worth noting, have stayed about the same. It's not so much the temperatures that are factoring in, it's the tire clipping point that seems to be hitting around lap 10 of the run. That's really escalated to the way of the blacks in these final few moments, as you see some of the teams likely to come in station.
Synchronized pitting for the Alkintech NHR Esports duo. Stefan Larkamp and Andrew Marquez will roll down pit lane. There's been trouble on the track for Jay Bronze, and it's through the exit of turn 2, I do believe, and he'll rejoin down in 21st position, has lost a bunch of ground relative to those around him. Brian Carey has also had a trip off the track, so a couple of cars finding some trouble, and Betafer at the front is starting to lose a little bit of ground to Phil Krause, with the margin growing to over a second. You wonder if it's the time to pit for the Alpine Stars geodesic racing machine.
And the indication on the radio wants to pin, and he is nearly spinning it. Beta 4 has nearly looped it a couple times, and it looks like Philip Kraus will follow.
Look at how tricky that pit entry is as well. Maximizing on entry going to be oh so difficult. Not a surprise that one man stays out in the form of Adam Blocker. Takes the primary tires a little bit longer than the trio of Kraus, Beta Chin. Van der Sant, Malechka will therefore stay out as well as pit road execution comes into center stage. How will they fare on the merge? You can see there was a pocket of clean air, but they're going to potentially miss it. Kraus the first to drop and roll. Chin a little bit slower off the lane. And there will be increased separation. Phil Kraus with a monster of a pit lane launch.
Able to get a better run out of the box in of itself, and now he's got traffic as buffer cars here. Adam Frazier, that buffer. Beta 4 has been fighting that race car, it seems, right from the onset. But now has to be able to try and find a way to manage things. Nearly loops it again. He continues to just clip the very edge.
Josh Chin has lost it on cold tires. Spins them around on the primary compound, it should be noted as well, which will always fire up just that little bit slower. And the private label Team Hype Racing machine will lose nigh on about 15 seconds with a long, lazy recovery through the gravel.
Now we've seen it a couple times. The cold tires, they have a hard difficulty to be able to fully rotate their way through some of the corners. Joshua Chin in this case also picking up some of the curbing. Some of the others picking up some troubles. Jay Brandt losing the back end on the entry onward to the apex off. That caused some of the loop around. Drivers like Blocker coming on in live action. Others like Kerry continue their damage, take the cones with them.
Yeah, we'll grab a look as well as Joshua Chin's moments as, again, he is on the primary compound. Sorry for the confusion, there's only so much we can do. Takes a little bit too much curbing, a little bit too much liberties with the power as well, and he loops his way around. So, for Blocker and Van der Sant, the mandatory stint on the primary compound is done. They both will switch to the alternates, and while Phil Kraus and Beta have sailed on through, it is now tire advantage to Blocker and Van der Sant, alternates versus primaries once again.
And this could be the huge thing for Blocker, with Blocker really picking up some of the tempo last time. No time lost compared to where he was before the pit stop as well. We're on 4.2 seconds back. He is in a great spot to try and chase after Kraus and Beta currently with the way things are going, as long as he doesn't make any mistakes on the cold tires.
And by going long, he also opens up more flexibility when it comes to the final stops. A limiting factor will not be tires, it will be how much fuel they need to put in the car. It'll be interesting exactly how Blocker is going to play this. Remember as well, 85% fuel capacity relative to the regular 18-gallon fuel tank of the Dallara IR18. It shortens stints down. Sometimes it does make the Reds a little bit more preferable to what a longer open fuel tank would deliver. Blocker already building up momentum and getting those tires where they need to be. The gap almost, and now under 4 seconds.
And this will be the major thing. Keep on charging ahead. Don't cry the tires, but keep the tempo up. Beta 4 will say is slowly chipping back the gap that he had built from Kraus's end at the back end of the last run. Looking a little bit more calmer on the primary wall tires compared to where he was at the end of the last run with the Reds.
Got to look at the track and the start-finish line that is parallel with the oval start-finish line as well. Jason Brophy will go 16 almost laps and roll his way to pit lane, including the slightly shorter pace lap that we had behind the pace car, of course, starting on that back straightaway almost down the hill at the braking zone. So, less than a second, the gap at the front of the field as Phil Kraus regains control in the Lionheart IndyCar Series' second trip to the Motegi Grand Prix course. And it's not going to be done with action for Lionheart and Motegi Grand Prix, because next time out, next week, is the turn for the Lotus 79's JP, as the Lionheart Retro Series has its fun at this track.
I think that's going to be a very entertaining race, because the Retro Series always does a very strong job on the road courses, a challenging car to be able to avoid getting wing damage. The Lotus 79, remember, having some art updates as well, so we'll have to see how some of the drivers fare with those little adjustments to how the cars could fare out damage-wise around the racetrack.
We'll talk more about that next Thursday, looking forward to it, but for some of the drivers, a lot of work to do to rebuild paint schemes in the run-up to that race. You're watching the RaceSpot TV and the Next Level Racing Motegi Grand Prix presented by SimRace247. It continues to be the dominant man in 2022 that leads at the front of the field, with Phil Krause looking for win number 12 in his IndyCar Series career. But behind him, it's the debutant John Bedefor hunting him down, with Adam Blocker, the king of Lionheart, lurking on fresh rubber. We'll be back on RaceSpot with the run to the checkered flag.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
Welcome back to RaceSpot TV and coverage of the 2022 Lionheart IndyCar Series. We're back in the land of the rising sun for the Next Level Racing Motegi Grand Prix presented by SimRace247.com. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, as always alongside with the one and only Justin Prince in what has been an electric race so far, but with alternate tyre compounds. It's Adam Blocker that is on the charge and has moved his way forward into second spot on the alternate compound of tyres with more grip. He has found a stronghold to work his way forward to second, but JP, we know that as we head to the final stint of the race, it will all equalize at the fronts. It will be a brawl to the checkered flag.
Adam Blocker needs to be able to find a way to get to and past Krause within the next 5 laps to be able to make sure he's there before the tire clipping point, then has to try and play defense. Blocker in a very difficult spot, but a doable spot with the pace he's been setting over the rest of the top 5 currently to gain back from where he was as far back as 6 seconds on the primary tires. He's now flying on those reds.
We did see it, like you say, trend back in the direction of the alternate compound of tire, primary compound of tire at the end of the race. I'd be curious to see how it shakes out here as Brian Beard tries to rejoin the track. Another car having issues, I would think, on the exit of turn number 2. Just balancing the car is so tricky. Matt Taylor gets in front of Matthias Krause, who has switched over to the primaries as well and is looking to secure yet another top 10 in what has been a remarkable run of form this summer.
It's been an incredible season for some of the drivers. Absolutely, Taylor's been improving more and more as we've seen him in this respective side as you take a look at them in particular right now, top 5. Some others continue to find some rough parts. You see just not able to get the right apex, it looks like, at first, sending off Beard there to the sand.
Small mistake, easy to do at this track, which does require plenty of commitment. Does have some elevation change as well. Has to nestle itself around the oval. It's a very different sort of a mindset designing a road course around an oval than a traditional roval. Compromises made in so many different ways. Again, left side of the screen, you can look at those tire compounds as it shakes out, with drivers being required to use each compound through the course of the race for at least one complete lap. At that race in Watkins Glen, when we had the safety car on the opening lap, we had much hubbub about whether you would be able to swap over at that point in time. Didn't see necessarily anyone take that option. Josh Chin, after the spin, has nestled himself in 6th spot, JP, in front of Taylor, but about 3 seconds back from Robert Malechka. Some no man's land for all of these drivers, 5th on back.
Yeah, Chin originally was running that entire first run in no man's land, but now it's essentially built up the second grouping of no man's land, 16 seconds back. If it wasn't for the spin, we might be talking about him within the top 4 still. It's just not been working as well as it's been as great for Chin. But for Blocker, the gap is under a second, and he's running out of time, already coming to the start of lap 6 of the stint. Not too much time to work with before the cliff point.
Probably getting to lap 10 is where it will really start to be more of a factor. It will trend as well with track temperature, so as we work through the course of the afternoon, maybe it swings a little bit more to Blocker than it would have in the opening stint of the race. But as they power through the final sector, it will be the halfway marker of this race. The Next Level Racing Motegi Grand Prix hits the halfway point with 21 laps still left to play.
Blocker's been really gaining his time on the reds in the middle sectors and some of the technical parts of the racetrack. Is he just a little bit deeper, able to get through the brakes and let it roll a little bit more to keep up with Kraus? Tough thing is, how far can he push? How many push-to-passes in turn is he willing to even utilize to try and get this pass done is a huge question, too, you have to think.
So let's talk about those push-to-passes. Phil Kraus does have the fastest lap of this race with a 1:34.544. By the way, Blocker's fastest 34.596, but he has also been in relative dirty air and fighting as Betafer has lost ground. 1.5, now 1.7 whack, and quickly losing draft as well. Going to be important that he can get into the groove and close as soon as possible. And there's the look, JP, at the push-to-passes, and the front of the field, they've been reluctant to use them. But of course, as we work later into this race, when the fuel runs become slightly shorter, drivers will take increased liberties because it does also eat into your fuel reserves.
Yeah, a good point to think about when it comes to mileage with how tight it is for the fuel. Blocker, remember, went that lap further, so he might have that little bit extra he can push on towards the end of this race. That's going to be something to really look towards. I think right now you see just Blocker trying to really charge his way to this corner. Just can't seem to cut his way through the 0.7 of a second or so buffer. It's gained maybe a couple 100s this time. Just not able to burst that bubble Kraus has built.
He is also at the point now where dirty air is going to play a factor. Jay Brandt, by the way, I think has returned to pit lane and has retired from the race. Has been a difficult one for that number 15 machine after starting down towards the back of the field after not punching in a lap time in qualifying. We watch from slightly up above as Blocker continues to work on the back. Van der Zandt closing on Betafer as well. Interesting strategy through the course of this race. And a reminder, 10 push-to-passes available to drivers. It's not just push-to-pass. I say this every time we talk about IndyCars and road course racing. It can be about push-to-defend as well.
That will be an important thing to consider. I think why Kraus isn't using him, of course, as the leader. Been having such a dominant run, right? Hasn't really been having to really push those buttons, so to speak. Yes, I know what I meant by that. Either way, Blocker also is in that spot where you don't want to end up using them right now because you'll end up having to use them to defend if you get this lead away. And in turn, have to use them in the final 9 or so laps to go in this race. So it's kind of now the chess match within the chess match within the checkers match of this race.
front brakes glow as down the hill it's gravity working against you as you get onto the brakes. Not going to have to worry too much about brake fade or anything of the kind, but Blocker has closed and has built some momentum as they cross the stripe for yet another lap. About 30 minutes left of racing to go as Blocker builds and continues to close. A car length and a half as they work through turns 1 and 2, but Kraus with a better run will hold into 3.
Kraus just able to park in the middle of the apex. Blocker dealing with that aero wash. Just forcing a little bit more off that throttle. Might also be able to save that bit of gas again for the late pit stops coming up. We're already within a few laps from the window, mind you. So a lot of big picture plays here as Blocker trying to find a way to chip on. Just can't find a way to stay at the back of the wing to where he needs to be able to set things up.
Top 4 split by under 5 seconds. It's the most competitive field that Lionheart has ever seen, and we are seeing that on the road courses. What a wonderful addition it is as well to have John Badefer as part of the field, and Jacob Oster is finding out the hard way what the step up is like from the Lionheart Speedway Series and the DW12 to D Dallara IR18. A better run with more grip for Blocker through the hairpin, the slowest point of the track, and you can tell Kraus is feeling the pressure as he gets onto the button, uses an extra 70 odd horsepower down the straight to cover off a move from Adam Blocker.
Blocker have to take account of noticing that he utilized that right there, knowing he's got one less to be able to try and push past around him later on. If he can find a way around this 19, that has to be that bit of motivation. Here's the problem. The tire cliffing point is about a lap from now. We've seen last stint, he was slower than Kraus last time by at the stripe.
And it's still under 0.4 of a second for the time being, and we know Blocker has a tendency to save his push-to-passes for the end of the race. Look how good he is under the brakes, using the purchase the softer compound of tire will give him as they round on towards the run into turn 5. The gap to Badefer has actually shrunk very slightly. I think Kraus is at that point in the run where he is starting to struggle. 1:36.174. Having said that, JP, he is still the fastest man on the track.
Yeah, but it's only about a small bit of fall off that we see on the blacks compared to that at the start of the run on the blacks. It was only 3/4 of a difference compared to what he's doing now. Blocker's difference has already gone into nearly 2 seconds with the amount of fall off built up on these tires. And if anything, it's looking like Blocker, despite still able to hit his marks a little bit better on the entry, especially in sector 2 in the hairpin curve, for example, he's just in that maintain part of the run.
We didn't talk about it in our Moser Racing event details as Blocker fakes a lunge into turn 1. But the previous time the series visited this layout and this track was back in Season 6 when the Candyman Dustin Wardlow won from pole position. The margin of victory was just 0.7 of a second. Wardlow led the most laps, 30 in what that season was again a 42-lap race. Does it sound at all familiar, JP, to what we might just be seeing right here, right now?
Yeah, towards the end of the last run, being on equal footing, we've seen the tire fall off, equalize out, difficulty with the aero wash from Badefer, slip on back and back and back. It looks like Blocker is really now hitting that damaged part of this tire stint. His tires are starting to completely wash away on those reds.
The point of the run where you just mind yourself until you get back down to pit lane when it will equalize and we'll all be on equal footing when it comes to tires. We are not expecting any gambles when it comes to drivers throwing back on the primary compound of tire to get to the end of this race. The alternate very much preferred, still holding steady, 5 seconds splitting those top 4 spots. Let's check in with the charge back from Joshua Chin as he closes on Robert Malechka. It is Malechka that has the alternate red compound of tire. It's Joshua Chin on those primary compound of tires as they battle for what is 5th spot. And you can tell Kraus is starting to feel a little bit antsy, JP. He uses yet another push to pass, down to 7 left in this race.
Now, really just wanting to get himself, I think, to a good spot of a top 5. Malechka has slipped back into his grasp with that tire fall off. That will be the difficult thing, I think, the rest of the way for Chin to try and get another spot on forward, because the next spot, 12 seconds up the track. Chin, I think, has to know and might be feeling this might be the best he can get here.
Speaks to Malechka's evolution since he's joined up with Powerslide Motorsports, that he's able to run inside of the top 5 in these road course races. Yes, he's lost about 17 seconds to the leader, but that's by no means a slight on him, given the speed that we've seen from the likes of Kraus and Blocker. He's only 12 back from his teammate Van der Sant, so very much an evolution from a driver that shot into prominence in 2021 with what should have been a championship season in the Lionheart Speedway Series if he had been around for those opening 6 or so races in an 18-round season. It was that strong a run. Next time at the line, it will be 15 to go as Malechka locks the inside front on the run through turn 5. Blocker has hit that stalemate, that wall, 7/10 and unable to close, as we see from up above the run to the hairpin.
Blocker's hitting a lot of these tight rolling corners better than Kraus. That's, if anything, been the major thing keeping him close here. The tough thing, again, has just been the aero wash, because in the more mid-speed sections, Kraus has just been able to pick up more time with how those tires are. Blocker's just able to settle things a little bit better when it comes to sections like right about here. This is towards Kraus's wheelhouse, because he's able to get the power down and get the grip better without the aero wash to factor. That costs Blocker just about a lot of the time he picks up. But sections like this one, Blocker's just been able to roll the corner better and just maintain the pace. The talent's just been the main thing keeping him there despite the aero wash.
It's been a difficult year for Blocker, I think, across this competition after finishing inside of the top 5 every time he competed last year. The run of top 5 finishes that stretched back to September of 2020 came to an end earlier this year. A lot of the races, unfortunately, he has missed. He has raced from home, which has definitely made things a little bit more challenging, but unfortunately, there are no excuses in a championship, and Phil Kraus is on his way forward. Jacob Oster down pit road on lap 28 of 42. It's not the longest of runs to get to the checkered flag. It will require a bit of a light touch with the right foot.
Did make it 15 laps, though, so that might be a little bit calming, and Christian Steele's probably saying that in his ear right now to make sure he knows for the rest of this time, for the next 17 years. In all seriousness, it's going to be important that he maintains that knowledge towards Jacob. Don't push too hard to make sure you're able to make it to the checker flag and you don't finish in 21st.
Again, smaller field, which means even if you struggle, there are more points on the board than it would be in a regular race. As Kraus will bail to pit lane, wants to shed himself of the primary compound of tires. Blocker power slides through the final corner, aptly fitting in the Powerslide Motorsports machine. But now it's the call for the potential undercut from our champion-elect.
I know Blocker's able to go a further lap or so on the fuel at least, but I think based on what we've seen in some circumstances with the tire difference, that the undercut has been a tricky thing in some circumstances. Kraus taking the 9.1 seconds in the stall. The question is, how will this play out with Blocker going the overcut here, having to go another lap around with tires that are running the 136-second bracket?
And remember, you do have to fire the tires up. Yes, it's warm track temperatures, but primary cold tires were a concern for some on the build up to this one. What will it be in terms of the alternate tire, though, for Phil Kraus, of course, now, who will have to nurse them an extra lap at the very least compared to that number 1 machine of Adam Blocker. As Blocker winds up to the final sequence of corners, let's call out Betafer, able to hold the gap to Blocker as, again, will equalize out on tires. Don't discount the Alpine Stars geodesic racing machine from joining the fun at the front of the field.
Betafer's not been dealing with any traffic either. He's not been drifting the car around all too much either this run. Betafer looking a little bit more comfortable in the primary wall tires throughout this entire stint. Blocker trying to go as far as he can. Betafer just came in. And keep in mind, Kraus at full speed, picking up a fair bit of time with this undercut, you'd have to think.
So it'll be Betafer that will be the first to roll to pit lane in his black and gold machine. Kraus, of course, should get out in front as Betafer looks for his pit stall. Grab a look at the Race Spot TV replay. And a moment for that bright yellow machine of Jason Brophy in the private label team hype car. Just running wide through turn 3, overcommitting. And then has to let a couple of cars, his teammate Connor Harrington included, slide on through.
And in turn, just cost him a few seconds there. But 5 seconds now the gap between Kraus and Betafer. That's just on 1 lap difference there. It was about a half a second to a second slower in the box in the lane for Betafer. But Philip Kraus is flying on that outlap right now and into the first flyer.
And if you're blocker, hopefully you have notice of that one, because maybe you think about coming down now. Although he's already on lap 15, about the edge of where we expected drivers to be able to go. So potentially this is the lap that we will see Blocker come in, and Blocker gets on the push to pass. I think indication of his intentions to roll to pit lane, trying to build up some speed on this lap, that he'll dive to the right-hand side as he sweeps down the hill and in towards pit lane for the final time for a 12-lap blast on the red alternate compound of tires.
Blocker's going to have to push hard the rest of this run because he lost 1 second to the comparison of both the Krauses who are battling Mindshoe, not in the same strategy window. So this is going to be important to see how Blocker can try to fare out and close up the rest of this run.
So Blocker up on the jacks, Firestone tires getting swapped over. He'll stick on the primaries and get an 8.4 second service. It'll be shorter by virtue of the later stop. And while Kraus will retake the lead, Blocker will have fresh tires to the end and potentially a lighter car to boot as well. The gap, 3 full seconds.
Settling to about 2.6, but that is still a significant margin picked up on the undercut call for Philip Kraus. Is that the race-winning move? He's been dominating much of this race, but Blocker has showcased he's been better at the end of the run so far.
No traffic concerns. That will be pleasing with 12 laps to duel at the front of the field. Matthias Kraus now battles with Matt Taylor, the 8 versus the 59, down in towards turn number 3. The Madworks Motorsports machine able to secure 7th spot for the time being. Betafer lost ground as well. In fact, the entirety of the top 4 is stretched from 5 seconds splitting them all to 9 splitting them all, JP.
That was to be expected with the undercut play. Vanda said, I don't think we'll be able to get to Betafer unless Betafer really slides around the racetrack again on the reds. But the main thing still have to keep an eye on, at least for myself, is can Blocker find a way to get back within range of Kraus? Right now, if anything, Kraus is, with the tires more warmed up, running away and pulling away at a significant gap, and Blocker's not been able to chip away yet.
What has Jason Brophy done? So I'm trying to regain composure and get back onto the track. The Race Spot TV replay machine misses nothing, locking up the inside front and running through the gravel.
Oh, and here he goes to an error part of the road course. Goes to an error layout nearly.
Betafer punches in the fastest lap of the race, a 1:34.405, a statement of intent from the debutant.
Question is, how does Betafer fare with the rest of the campaign? He's got a couple more chances to try and become a sparkle rookie. Late joiner, I would say. Be able to go full send if he was to choose for 2023. And he might be a part of another stellar rookie group if he's able to build things up and elects to run. We've seen it already this year with the drivers who came in from some of the R series, from Speedway in particular last year. We might see it again in 2023.
And we've seen Betafer quick on the Monday Night IndyCar coverage that we've had on Race Spot TV on the ovals, so going to be one to track, that is for sure. It's down to 2 seconds, the gap at the front of the field. Blocker on the charge as we throw the spider cam down the hill in towards that braking zone at the penultimate corner. And the gap just continues to shrink. Blocker has, I think, pulled a strategy card that will give him an opportunity. It will be about converting the chance when it's there.
And now the tires, I think, have really started to come up to temperature for Blocker. The 2-lap difference might be close. But the major thing is, can Blocker close up within more than 0.3 of a second? He's not been able to do that yet. And now this will be the huge play. Can he get close enough for an actual send on Philip Kraus? Can Kraus continue to play the defensive card because Blocker's doing what Blocker's done throughout parts of this race? Roll the corners in the heart of the entry and the apexes and the slower corners much better than what Kraus has been able to do. Kraus, in particular, the S's, several times right in this part, has taken it a little bit shallow on the right side. Blocker has gained ground each and every time that Kraus has done that mistake in the S's.
And last time it was almost 9/10 that Blocker gained compared to Kraus, and it's trending the same direction this lap as well, with the gap down to 1 second and continuing to trend downwards. Has Kraus pushed the tires just a little bit too hard, trying to make the undercut work and to build an advantage? Is it going back in the favor of the Powerslide Motorsports #1 machine? Again, down the hill they go. The gap below 1 full second.
Blocker just seems to be starting to really focus in right now. And those push to passes we talked about, let's try and go defensive a bit earlier. Might come to play 6 for Kraus, 8 for Blocker. Blocker with a good advantage on the push to passes here, as he's now within about 9/10.
We'll get the draft, but we'll also feel that aero wash as well. He'll have to mind now the tires a bit more. Avoid overheating the fronts especially. So this is one of the most important phases of the race at the front. There is fighting up and down through the field. It is no surprise to be saying that about any Lionheart Series race. We have Brophy with Brian Carey, Matt Houston, 2 drivers recovering after spins as Brian Carey looks to try and get back to the top 20.
Bit of a bold send for a moment there for Carey. Houston not giving him any space for a moment. Carey does have the faster car right now with the better tire compound for the end. Houston elected to go on the primary wall tires. Those of the race will just have to play defensive mode to be able to not have the honor of being dead last on the racetrack. Jason Brophy's following in their laps, though.
We'll see how it goes, of course, after his previous spin. 26 took to the green. We are down to 23, all on the lead lap, and it looks like we'll stay that way. With about 8 laps to go as we run right now. Again, check in with the front. Couple of laps delta on the tires. We expect that Blocker will now try and cool down the tires and push, maybe in a couple of laps time, bait Phil Kraus into burning a couple of the push to passes. But Phil Kraus has seen it all this season. He's not going to blink if it's going to get done on track. We saw what Van der Zandt had to do at Watkins Glen, JP. It was physical, it was forceful.
Blocker's going to have to try and pressurize a mistake from Kraus here. Kraus has been making a few here and there. You see already with sends like that, that's trying to pressure Kraus to maybe do the same. Try and overcook his stuff a bit. Try and force himself to have it's not a good of an exit with that clean air. That's the major advantage for Kraus currently. The clean air to be able to get the power down compared to what Blocker's having to do, riding on behind to make sure he doesn't run into the back end of the pink machine.
8 to go. 7 at the line. A quarter of a second splits the top 2 into the S's. Betafer has held station 5 seconds adrift. Van der Zandt is closing, maybe not as quickly as he would like. 6/10 the last time by. Might be within striking distance as we close to the end of this race. 5 races left to go in 2022 after this one. And it was close through the hairpin. The close it's been. Both drivers get on the button. The fight is on.
I think they're dead even on their timing for the push. Blocker not close enough for the send. He's starting to show a little bit of his hand, though, saying, I am quicker in this hairpin. I am quicker in these S's. I can go when I want to go. The problem is, Kraus is not making it any sort of easy to be able to make that dive as he loses again ground. The bugaboo of this race for Blocker has been victory corner.
This is a technically frustrating track at times, especially in these Indy cars, which look performant, look aerodynamic, and while they can be lethargic, slow beasts as well that you've got to get to grips with. Fixed setup competition means they're all fighting with the same tools. It's about how you apply them. 2 hands, 2 feet, the same as everyone. 7 laps to go. It's a great fight at the front of the field. Bombers back, Oster, Graf fight for 11th on back as well. There's action all around the track.
Keep my eyes on this section once again. Take a look at that air battle that's been going on. Bombers back, able to take advantage of a slipping back Jacob Oster, who is on the primary tires for the lead, though of notice. They are in the primary section where Blocker can charge. This is Blocker's best part of the circuit. Can he take advantage again?
Setup out of the hairpin will be crucial. Kraus trying to just roll to get onto the power nice and early, and again onto the push to pass they go. This time it's Blocker a tad quicker, but was it going to be enough? Is he just trying to go through Kraus's push to passes? A look, a shimmy, and a tuck back into line. Blocker continues to search. Kraus planting himself where he needs to be.
Blocker that time, keep in mind, got a little bit earlier to the button. Still has that +2 advantage on the push to passes here. He can use a push per lap. Kraus has to find a way to bank around here, try and find any sort of distance. Blocker's not having any mistakes though in his aero wash right now for him to get that breathing space for a button push.
It's going to be crucial for Blocker that he doesn't make any mistakes as he again fakes a half look. Here's a look at the RaceSpot TV replay. Mitchell Riggs getting the tank slappers of all tank slappers as he dips 2 wheels into the grass. Somehow gets away with it, JP.
Somehow still able to keep up in this race as Blocker really rolling the corner better than what Kraus can do right here. Might have a chance here. Here we go.
To the inside, looks Blocker. Not willing to overcommit, and I appreciate the conservative approach right now, but I have no doubt that Blocker knows that he's got a tire advantage and is just waiting for his opportunity to pounce. And while they fight, while they lose time, it's not really enough to bring Betafur into the clutches of this fight at the front. He's still concerned about Van der Sant 2.5 seconds back.
Well, look at that. Kraus not able to use his this time, electing to bank it. Now how to play the block.
Well, block the Blocker himself, but Kraus has to just keep it steady. Almost loses the rear end as he tried to roll onto the power. Nervy moment up and down through the field. One of the 2 push-to-pass advantage that Adam Blocker has been burned without the move being done.
That's going to be something Kraus keeps in mind, absolutely, because if he's able to do it one more time, he might be in a great spot here. Blocker, though, has to be able to try and do something different. Try and find a way to trick Kraus out, force him into mistake here, to be able to utilize that advantage he's still got if Kraus doesn't use it.
Nervy moments across of the paddock, that is for sure, as 2 of the best that Lionheart have seen go wheel to wheel. Blocker with a late move into turn 5, unable to make it stick, but intentions have been known. Blocker is willing to throw the late lunge.
And this time I think Blocker's already picked up that move before in the S's, even with the backup. Really cost him some ground last time. Now he needs to be able to find things forward. The hairpin curve might be one of the prime chances to really slice and dice things up, as we've seen for the downhill straight.
Van der Sant within 1.8 now of Betafur. Battle for 3rd as well. Very, very fascinating. Will come to 4 to go this time by. Kraus feels the need to use the button. Brings him down to just 3 push-to-passes left in the course of this race. Blocker again with the look, but it's a half-hearted look. Not a look that you expect him to go for the move, as while one power slide driver fights at the front, it's day over for Brian Carey.
Brian Carey, keep in mind, just had his incident down the front straightaway section of the course. This is in that rally back up to the 88, and bye-bye race car.
Maybe getting 2 wheels on the grass on the left, maybe just on the power a bit too aggressively. End result, the same. carrying the wall. He'll watch as Blocker goes to the outside on the run into turn 3. Try and compromise Kraus and pinch him if he can. But the private label Team Hype machine is having none of it. Kraus continues to hold strong.
If anything, Kraus pinched him back, trying to force him back off the gas. Either that or hit the side of his tire. Now will force Blocker to have to reset. Once again, Blocker is better in the middle of the apexes right now, but Kraus is looking very strong defensively. Big mistake.
Bit of an overcommitment there from Blocker. Able to minimize the time loss, though. That might be crucial when it comes to the outcome of this race. My word, we've been treated to some road course races since RaceSpot and Lionheart joined up at the start of 2021. Silverstone last year lives on for the right reasons and for the wrong reasons. This is one where it might just be all the right reasons. Phil Kraus still able to cover off Blocker, who did not use the push to pass this time around, trying to maintain the advantage to Kraus.
Yeah, that's an intriguing play a bit here. Right now, coming to 3 laps to go. Blocker might be able to use a couple in 1 lap. The question is now, where would he use that extra push to pass?
So here we go. Into turn 1 with 3 laps to play for the Next Level Racing Motegi Grand Prix presented by SimRace247. Blocker tries to sweep wide and cut back and get the momentum and use the push to pass. Spring to surprise, but he's forced to the outside into the braking zone of turn 3. Again, Kraus will force him wide and Kraus will hold on. But this is the sign that Blocker will be pushing to the very dying depths of this race.
He tried to utilize that advantage in a different spot. Just didn't work in the right area though, and now they're dead even on the push to passes. Blocker's chances getting ever more difficult. He'll have to get it done on pure skill in the corners, more so than the utilization of the push to pass down the downhill straight, potentially.
Not equal on push to passes, because Kraus, I think, did not respond. Blocker had the 2 push to pass advantage. It's now down to just the 1. It will be 2 to go at the line. You can see some stragglers as Blocker deep into the hairpin. He'll lose some time, lose some ground, and has the work to do to close on the back as we're coming to 2 to go.
Yeah, and this time Blocker didn't use the push to pass. Kraus didn't use the push to pass too far back for either of them to take advantage. Botafer, keep in mind, Betafer should say, if anything explodes in that group, is in a prime spot to be able to battle for the race win, trying to hold off a charging Van de Sande late here.
Plenty to look at. 2 to go. Blocker has made up the ground, and as Murray Walker always said, it is one thing to catch, it is another thing to pass. It's been playing out today, that is for sure. There is fighting through the field, but what a battle it has been at the front. Again, Blocker uses the push to pass on the run to turn 3. This time trying to set up the up and under, but again, Kraus is wise to it. Blocker is searching and trying everything, but Kraus is a brick wall here today.
Utilizing the last name from Adam. Really utilizing that skill of defensive driving to be able to hold on to this advantage. Blocker is quicker, but Kraus just continuing to take advantage of the track position here.
You don't need passing to make a great race. You need intensity, you need tension, and this is what great racing is all about. The anticipation of a lunge from Blocker into the hairpin, smokes the right front, but able to slow it down in time. Increased aggression as Kraus is baited into using a push to pass. Blocker will have the advantage as we come to 1 lap to go. The fight for third closes as well. Half a second splits Van de Sande and Betafer.
Van de Sande has pushed the tempo to be the quickest car on the racetrack. Have a chance at a podium, but that battle for the race lead down the front straightaway, wing to wing. Blocker has a good chance. Here we go.
Uses the push to pass, trying to surprise Kraus into turn 1. He'll look to the outside if he can keep a nose alongside and get back on the button. Don't discount him. Kraus has none of it as they sweep into turn number 3. 1 final lap to decide it all.
Gonna come down to one, maybe two more sections that Blocker can try and make this pass. He still cannot find a way to fully rotate around to get himself alongside of the right spot. Kraus has done a phenomenal job defensively all night long.
Tower lighting up like a Christmas tree with so many drivers burning through the final push to passes. One in the pocket for each of the top 5 as they will tango to the line in what has been an electric return to the Motegi Grand Prix circuit. Blocker with the move to the inside, with the commitment and with the contact as well. He'll squeak his way on through, but it's not done and dusted. Still a few corners left to play.
Kraus is not going to like that one. Expect Kraus to be able to go for a big send if he can get there, but got too loose.
It was good from Blocker, the line that he took compromised Kraus as they got onto the power. Should be enough for Blocker to steal it at the death. Can his teammate Van der Sande do the same to Betafer on debut? It won't be enough, but what a race and what a dramatic race Motegi hosted for us today. 4 years on from the last time Lionheart came here, it's the king of Lionheart that punches his way back to HyperX victory lane as Adam Blocker takes career win number 36 in the Next Level Racing Motegi Grand Prix presented by SimRace247.com.
And Van der Sande looped it around in the battle for third at the end as well, but what a thrilling battle to the end. Blocker not afraid to get the elbows out to get the job done after 7+ laps of battling. What a finish, as the 96 of Van der Sande still finishes 4th despite going backwards.
We'll take another look at this as well, because this is what opportunistic lunges are all about. Phil Kraus, I don't think will complain too much about that one. All's fair when you're fighting between two drivers that share a lot of respect for one another.
Yeah, Blocker seeing the opening to dive in underneath. Missed a little bit of the bottom, yes, but not too much of a boot. And Kraus still could have had a shot if he was able to get the power down without the back end slipping in the final corner, but that tire difference for Blocker, a huge part of that extra bit of grip at the end, as we talked about, that could come into play there.
And sometimes it's about keeping one move in your back pocket. We saw lunges from Blocker through several corners, but not through that one. It was held to the very dying last laps of this race. Blocker able to get it done through the crucial Turn 9 at the track formerly known as Twin Ring Motegi. Hopefully, JP, it's not another 4 years before we come back here, but we've got plenty more road course racing left to come in 2022.
I think a race like that gives good credit to keep on racing here, right? But you have to say, it was difficult for Blocker. Remember, he had the different strategy from the get-go, had to claw his way back up to Kraus, to Betafer, had to close in 4 seconds on the different tire compound. But his strategy ended up being the right play with the better fuel marks and the better rubber in terms of the laps on them for the checker.
It is Adam Blocker that will celebrate for the 36th time in HyperX victory lane as Powerslide Motorsports, after winning on the oval a couple of weeks ago, will do it on the road course here today. What a great race and what a great spectacle we were treated to. Next time out, we go to the Alabama roller coaster, the Barber Motorsports Park. What a different sort of race that will be compared to today. Let's take a look then at your SimRace247 unofficial race results. And after the margin of victory 4 years ago was 0.7 of a second, today it is just 0.4. It is Adam Blocker that leads only 1 lap. That mattered. The final lap, yes, he led through some of the strategy calls, but it was the move on track that got it done. Phil Kraus settles for another second here at Motegi. John Betafer in the Alpine Stars geodesic racing machine on debut gets a podium. What a great day for him as he will look to close 2022 with more solid performances. Van der Sande tried his hardest, spun on the final lap, still holds on to a 4th place finish. Joshua Chin, after struggling at the start, was able to fight his way back up to 5th. Robert Malechka down in 6th with Taylor, Kraus, Harrington, Kalisto the top 10. Harrington, our hardest charger on the day, end of line penalty, up into 9th spot. Bombers Back will finish 11th, the best of the Ascari Autosport machines, with Jacob Oster down in 12th, finishing the race on the primaries. Tyler Graf, Adam Fraser and Larkamp finished the top 15, with Marcus Kinsella Beard, Riggs and Brophy the top 20. Behind them in one of the smaller fields for 2022, it's Alex Guillon, Matt Houston, the final cars on the lead lap, with Brian Carey enduring until he could endure no more, 23rd, 6 laps down for the Canadian. Bradley Sexton, James Brandt and Caleb Bensi will round out the field of 26. The fastest lap went to Adam Blocker on lap 32, the 1:34.325. And as we get set to talk to the drivers and to talk to Adam Blocker in HyperX Victory Lane, we dive into our Lionheart HyperX post-race show, because the Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com, and don't forget there is a promo code as HyperX celebrates their 20th birthday. Join the celebration with 15% off select products by using the promo code Lionheart15. That's LIONHRT15, Lionheart15 for 15% off. Let's head on over then to HyperX Victory Lane, where once again we are joined by Adam Blocker, who is chatting away in the cool-down room with John Bader for a lot of fun out there, Adam. It was difficult to get the move done. It was the move that you left to the last lap that was the one that got you the win.
Yeah, wow. First want to thank John and Phil for the great racing. Yeah, but really the thing that allowed me to win after I really screwed up qualifying like normal. And then as a team, we all decided to start on blacks because a bunch of us were right there together. And even though blacks were bad at the start, a bunch of us started on them like they wouldn't be able to pass. At least that was the theory, and that worked, especially for Alex and I. And that allowed me to basically get the bad tires out of the way when I had bad track position. And I got a bit lucky with Chin. He made a mistake in the pit, so I got a position. And yeah, and just on blacks, I was hoping to get both of them during their black stint, but I only got John. But yeah, I mean, that last stint with Phil was that's crazy. Some of the best racing I've had.
It was the type of racing as well where you were trying everything, but you weren't overcommitting. We talked about this on the broadcast as well. Are you and Phil teaming up this coming weekend for a crack at the V8 Supercars Online Series and their Bathurst 1000?
Yeah, I joked with you before the race to only mention it after we crashed. Well, we almost did that a few times, but yeah, I mean, seriously, like, he did a really good job defending. I tried to pass him at every single corner, I'm pretty sure, on the track. And I almost got him one time around the outside of 3 and 4, almost got him around on the outside of 1 and 2, almost got him down the inside of 5, and then eventually I knew there was one corner I hadn't tried it yet, and that was a corner that I historically could brake deep at, and I just went for it and made a little bit of contact, but I think it was clean enough. So
now we look to the end of the season, of course, a run of 5 races that see us next go to Barber, Milwaukee, Kansas, Phillip Island, and Auto Club. I know you're going to be traveling. You're going on a trip down under to see not just some supercars racing, but of course some MotoGP as well. Which races will you be around for as we bookend and close out this year?
Honestly, I don't know. Between that and then also some real-life commitments in the next few races, I don't know. I know I'll make Auto Club. That's the only one I know for sure. But yeah, just happy to get 3 wins in a row, at least in the races that I've done here after the rough start to the year. That was really good. And yeah, just want to thank everybody for the great race again. It was a lot of fun, and can't wait to watch it back.
Adam Blocker in victory lane for the 36th time in his Lionheart IndyCar Series career. It was the last lap that he got the move done on Philip Kraus, and we chat now with the man that had built 99% of the house, but unfortunately it was that final 1% where it was unable to get done. Great racing though, Phil, between you and Adam all the way through those closing laps.
Yeah, it was hard fought from start to end. Adam was able to save that extra lap of fuel on those first 2 stints, just sitting behind. It was Chen the first stint, and then John and I in the second, and I gave him a pretty sizable tire delta for the last run, so I knew it was going to be a case of hanging on and praying. Hung on almost the whole way, and then I knew that at that corner, I don't know if it has a name, or I don't know what number it is either, but that left-hander, I knew he was close enough to make the send, but I wasn't sure if he was going to do it because I know he did ascend on a crane in an open race in that corner, but he locked up a little bit. We smashed wheels and got on the marbles, and I couldn't really get any traction. But yeah, I think if he hadn't locked the inside front and we hit, I still don't know. I had no tires left, but yeah, all in all, a good run for the 19 private label Team Hypotheca car.
Heading over to Barbara next, the Alabama roller coaster. What should we expect there? It's also very difficult to pass there, so qualifying at the front like you did today will be oh so important.
Yeah, more of the same, just a lot more up and down, side to side, riding like you're in a roller coaster. But yeah, Barbara's always really fun to drive. The setup today was pretty okay, so hopefully Andrew can put something together for next week or 2 weeks from now. I don't know when it is.
I'm sure Andrew will take pretty okay in terms of a rating for his setup. And of course, 2 races at Japan, 2 second place finishes. How do you rate your experience at Motegi in 2022?
Would have been nice to be one spot higher in both races, but I didn't plow wall down at the oval, so I'd say that's a pretty sizable improvement.
Phil Krause continues the great run of form that has seen him finish on the podium in every single race he's competed in 2022. We switch over to the debutant and to John Baderfer, who had a great run and able to hold off Alexander Van Assen in the closing stages to grab a podium on debut. John, what's it like now to be part of this Lionheart IndyCar Series community and get a podium on your first try?
It's a lot of fun, just watching the battle between Adam and Philip, and then trying to hold off Alex at the end there. Was, that's what it's all about. So it was a good blast.
As we look to the rest of this season, of course, we've seen you be plenty strong on road courses, but this is a series where the predominant number of races are on ovals. What should we expect from you as you continue to learn more and more about oval racing in this car?
I just in the practice sessions I've done before, making my debut here, I feel like I was keeping up with the fast guys. So, obviously they might step it up a little bit for the race, but we'll see. Definitely going to do my best to keep up.
And of course, you come into this series after running with your teammate Graham Saunders in a bunch of the Monday Night IndyCar races we've covered on RaceSpot TV. Any chance you're going to try, after hopefully a successful run in 2022, to bring more of your friends to the party for next year?
We'll see. I honestly, I was just trying to give this a try and see what it's about, and definitely a lot of fun. So maybe I can drag Graham out here and make a run at the team championship along with him and maybe another teammate. So we'll see.
Love the sound of it. Congratulations on the run to the podium on debut, John.
Thank you.
John Baderfer rounds out our podium interviews here on RaceSpot TV from Twin Ring Motegi. A delight as always to talk to the various drivers, but JP, it's time now to look forward. We'll get another couple of weeks off. We'll be back on October 5th from the Barbara Motorsports Park, the Alabama roller coaster, for round 18 of 22. We are winding down. It's been a long journey since we started during March.
Yeah, this season's gone in a different direction compared to what we may have expected for a couple of the drivers. But it's the matter of making sure you don't get caught in a spider web at Barbara, because that racetrack could catch a few drivers off guard. Should be fun on October the 5th to see how things fare out and see which drivers end up getting eaten by a giant spider.
And I think to some degree as well, we'll be wondering what it's going to be like when it comes to the tires, because again, it might be the race where, despite the primaries maybe, if we had a slightly larger fuel tank being the preferred option, the alternates may very well still hold up as we move forward. And we'll grab one look at the Next Level Racing schedule before we say goodbye, JP, because it's a fascinating ride that we've still got left on our agenda. Barbara, followed by Milwaukee Mile, which I know a lot of drivers and fans of IndyCar racing around the world would love to see the NTT IndyCar Series return to. Then to Kansas, which we know we're going to get maybe a slightly packed style of race, and then to a race where we'll expect chaos at Phillip Island before building to the double point showdown at Auto Club.
Now, Barbara has talked about going to be intriguing. The ovals, though, I will say, in that mix before Auto Club are also interesting. The Milwaukee Mile, always a challenging race. Of course, a lot of hype for that racetrack because it was announced earlier today as part of NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series racing in the postseason next year. It's coming back for real-world action, but Milwaukee going to put on a good show. Kansas as well has had some wild moments as of late.
Plenty to look forward to, of course, in this Lionheart Racing Series coming up. Before we say goodbye, it is time to thank those that make this possible, starting with the title sponsor of the Lionheart IndyCar Series. You're passionate about sim racing, but it always feels a little flat compared to the feeling of driving a real car. Now you can actually feel what it's like to drive a race car. Butt kicker haptic hardware and software are easy to install and let you feel every bump in the track, slip of your tire, and engine redline. The tactile feedback is so accurate and realistic, you'll be driving faster and having more fun than ever before. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com.
Next Level Racing is an industry-leading cockpit and motion simulator manufacturer devoted to creating the most immersive experience possible for the global sim racing community. Take your racing to the next level and visit www.nextlevelracing.com.
Moser Racing is revolutionizing sim racing with the development of industry-leading hardware and software products like their R9 direct drive wheelbase and GS steering wheel. Featuring zero-delay wireless technology and made from high-end materials, Moser Racing delivers the precision you need to reach victory lane.
Gomez Sim Industries are makers of high-end esports equipment and controls, precision-built using nothing but the best materials available today. Passion and handmade craftsmanship drive each made-to-order build, creating a driving experience like no other. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com.
And it's not just these names, but so many more that make this all possible. To learn more about the partners of the Lionheart Racing Series, or to learn more about the 3 competitions the sanctioning body puts on, whether it be the Lionheart Speedway Series with the DW12, the Lionheart Retro Series with the Lotus 79, or the Lionheart IndyCar Series with its Dallara IR18, you can find all that information at LionheartRacingSeries.com. And of course, don't forget to go over to social media where you can stay up to date with the latest news from the virtual paddock. Lionheart Racing Series on all your favorite channels, keeping you up to date with the news that you need to know. But for now, it is time to bid you farewell. What a fun weekend it has been for us at Motegi with 2 virtual double-header races. One on the oval, one on the Grand Prix course. It was double delight for Powerslide Motorsports, but Phil Kraus continues the momentum with double P2 securing his road on the championship one step closer. It's a busy week next week for Lionheart competition with first Lionheart Speedway Series action with the Butt Kicker Iowa 175 presented by Gomez Sim Industries on Monday, while on Thursday, September 22nd, the Retro Series returns to the Grand Prix course here for the Butt Kicker Twin Ring 175 presented by Next Level Racing. The next time the IndyCar Series drivers are on call will be for the Moser Racing Grand Prix of Barber presented by Gomez Sim Industries on October 5th. You can catch all the action here live on RaceBot TV, rebroadcast on ESTV. On behalf of the team at RaceBot, for Justin Prince, for myself, Arjuna Kankipati, we bid you farewell from our doubleheader in the land of the rising sun. We'll see you from Barber as we get closer and closer to Coronation Weekend at Auto Club in the middle of December.